what is a remake? Because this year we've gotten quite a few very good remakes, actually. Silent Hill 2, Resident Evil 4. What remake would you like to see? And you can choose any game you want.
SOCOM 2.
Well,
I knew you were going to say
Yeah.
so. I had it on the tip of my tongue as I was going to say SOCOM 2.
I mean, I don't want to just take your answer from the first time we did this and print that.
Yeah, okay, well, SOCOM 2 from the PS2. I want either a Bad Company 2 or a Battlefield 3 remaster. Maybe tweak some of the game-breaking bits, but otherwise just give me like a 4K remake of that. Don't change anything else, like just give me the game as it was. Make sure you haven't got like the USAS frag nerf in there. Make sure you've done that.
No, USAS frag was king. Long live the USAS frag.
Remember when they brought up the flechettes, the little shotgun that was the underbarrel shotgun, but with the flechette rounds, but they got the coding wrong, and each flechette round did something like 300 damage, and it was like 100 flechette rounds, and people were just running around with that, and it was a one-hit kill at any range, anywhere. I remember that was going on for about 2 weeks. That was fun until it really got tiring. But yeah, Bad Company 2 or Battlefield 3. Give me a 4K remake of those.
Well, the thing is, would you want it to be a full remake / remaster, or would you like them to just do a texture pack?
Remaster is what I would ask for. Because I think Bad Company especially, they've said so many times, the reason they've never made a Bad Company 3 is Bad Company 2 just had this quality to it that's almost indescribable. Like, it's hard to put into words why it was so good. And, one of the things that stopped making another one is that, like, they don't know how to make another one that would live up to its reputation. Bad Company 2 was just excellent the way it was. It was different enough to the other FPSs that were out that I don't think you need to change anything.
Snake, how about you? What do you want to see a remake of?
Okay, I've got 3 answers.
Okay.
So I want a 4K remastered Assassin's Creed Black Flag, which, so far as I'm concerned, remains the definitive Assassin's Creed to this day. Yeah, well, Mr. Assassin's Creed down here doesn't agree, but I don't care, because this is my answer.
Yeah.
I played not quite all of the Assassin's Creeds. I don't think I've ever finished any of them. But Black Flag is the one that I had the most fun in. Like, there was something... It comes out to the Bad Company answer. I don't know what made it so good, but it was just the perfect mix of everything I wanted in an Assassin's Creed game, all in one. Despite being British and spending, almost your entire time just running around killing the British, it was awfully good. So that's number 1.
Yep.
Number 2, rapid fire answer: Ghost Recon Wildlands. Don't need to change very much in it at all. Maybe a little bit more stuff in the environment, but other than that, perfect. It was just a great game. Breakpoint could have been good.
Too much live service crap.
Yeah, it could have been good, and it just wasn't. Even with the changes, it was awesome. And slightly Wildcard one. On the pun. Any good quality first-person space shooting game. So, probably before your time, but there was a game called Free Space 2. And it was, you flew around in a spaceship and you shot other spaceships.
Yeah.
But it was like huge battles, but you were just like one part you were like one little cog in the machine. Like, you're an important cog, but a cog nonetheless. Most of the space shooters these days are sort of heavy microtransaction-y games. It's all about building your big, perfect, amazing, like, capital spaceship. I don't need that. I just want to be a little fighter flying around having a great time.
You don't need to be Eve, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just perfect the way it was. It was just absolutely excellent. So I'd love to see another Free Space 2.
Well, if you're looking for something similar, and I'm not going to say Elite Dangerous because that's obvious, the current version of No Man's Sky is probably what you would like. If you like the more exploration
Which
side.
is in the Steam Winter Sale.
Yes, I know! You just said. Alright, I'll give my answer. So, one thing about some of the remakes they've done recently is that I didn't expect them to try it because they were already amazing games, and at the time it was like, you don't need to do this. Silent Hill 2 is a big one because, in my opinion, it's the best horror game ever made. So why would you even waste the chance of doing it? They blew it out of the park. So the game I want to see, not because it was well reviewed, but because I think it could be done a lot better. Anybody remember Black?
Yeah.
It was such
So
a good game.
Good.
And the storyline was set up in such a way that you were like, well, it's going to be Black 2. Because the storyline was so well done for it, and there was so many strings they could have pulled on, and it was one of those, like, turns up, releases Black, doesn't elaborate, just leaves.
It's because there were three really good reasons you could greenlight it. One, it's a boomer shooter, which are all the rage at the minute. Doom, Trepang 2 kind of stuff. Two, you've already got a really good benchmark. You don't have to alter the levels at all, I'd argue.
Mm-hmm.
And three, you could fully realize the destruction. Don't get me wrong, it was a PS2 era game. It wasn't going to be as good as it was advertised. Now you could really mess shit up.
Yeah. I always remember, I look back on that game so fondly, and then you watch videos and you're like, and it's little things that start to get a little bit stupid. It's like, why does my M4 have the ejection port on the left-hand side so it's shooting into my face? Like, that's not right. But I agree, it looks cool having the bullets go across. And there was a few things like that, and it was just, but it was, for the time, it was really, really good.
See, I'd argue that any little technical problems with the weapons, like the MP5 having a magazine size of 80, was beaten by the argument, it's fun though. And
yeah, and they never styled it as a realistic military shooter. They styled it as, go and blow stuff up. So yeah, no, you are right.
Like the first level where you're in that street in Russia and you take an RPG to an office building and the explosion just doesn't just happen on the first floor, it goes up and out and blows out every window.
Funnily enough, that game had better destruction than Battlefield 2042.
I can't even begin to imagine what a very talented dev team would do with that basis of. So every 80s action film, but very pretty. The only thing that might lose it points with modern audiences is that it's not quick. You don't move around as quick as you would Doom. Doom's like methamphetamine, go shoot people with a shotgun. You do have to think about what you're gonna do and take cover and stuff like that. But just the idea of a 4K Black and cool. Taking an MP7 to a corridor, spraying it down, and when the dust settles, everything and the walls are gone.
AA-12 in Terry Crews style, in the Expendables, that type of thing. That's the vibe they could have gone for. You say like AA-12 frag grenades for Black would have been perfectly on point. But no, I think you're right. I think that was great. And I think part of the reason I think some of those games, like you say with Silent Hill, worked is because we were the generation, they brought out those games when we were of the PlayStation 2 generation, and we were the people that bought it. We're now the people who are obviously 20 odd years older or whatever, 20, 25 years older. We're now at the stage where we want our childhood games to come back in a way that we remember them and with graphics that we remember. Like Black, when you played it, you're like, this is the pinnacle. This is the most realistic graphics you ever had. You look at the game now and you're like, my God, it's awful. But that's just, times have changed. Like, we've gone from 480p to 720 to 1080, and we're now on 4K, 8K.
I will argue.
Your mind makes it think better.
I will defend.
So I'll go for another one.
Okay.
Sorry to put in. Let's keep on this track. Let's go older. GoldenEye.
You know what? When you were talking about the best graphics ever, I was literally thinking. I remember playing GoldenEye and being like, "Nothing can get better than this. This is it's so realistic." And then you put the big head mod on.
we were the generation that came out on. That was the game that you went to someone else's house. You played GoldenEye, and there was a mutual agreement that you never took Oddjob because he was so overpowered. Yeah. But that was where we started. That was 4-player split-screen multiplayer. That's where so many memories for us in childhood for video games were made.
Did you ever get a cardboard box and make it into a square?
and you had a cardboard box across the TV. Nightfire, you tape the box across and be like, no, pumpkin.
Now,
no big
I
deal.
do have some bad news for you all, and I don't know if you know this.
They're making it though.
They already have made a remake of GoldenEye. It was for the Nintendo Wii. It started off there, and it had Daniel Craig as Bond. Did you not know
I
this?
like Daniel Craig. He's excellent.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I don't know anything about the
So
Nintendo Wii.
it did get ported to the PS3 and Xbox, and it's probably on PC now.
There'll be an emulator.
Yeah.
But it's whether
And
you
yeah,
sail those particular
Sail the high
seas.
seas to get it.
and I will say
Yarr.
it did not go down well. The trailer they did to announce it was get a bunch of people our age in a room say, "Oh, would you like to know that we're making a new GoldenEye?" And everyone went, "Whoa, whoa!" And then they showed the game and we're like, "You haven't shown them this, have you?" it's
You didn't play the original, did you?
it
No,
looks
this is
rough.
it.
Plus, I'm not sure who still has the license to Bond in terms of games, because the last one we had was that Legends crap, where it was
that
like,
wasn't great.
let's take Daniel Craig and put him in a load of old movies, it'll be fine. It wasn't.
Was not
I
fun.
know that IOI Interactive, the people that make Hitman.
Sorry, yes,
they're
they do
making
have it.
They are making a Bond game.
Yes.
Not much is known about it at the moment. I think it's going to be on the same game engine as Hitman,
Which is
but I
fine.
don't know whether it's a good engine.
Yeah, it's a really good engine.
Very, very pretty, but I don't know if it's going to be first person or third person. Obviously, the Hitman engine is primarily a third person.
Mm.
I don't know anything more than that. They've kept things very, very tightly under wraps.
Sit rep. Don't search for Bond on Steam. Unless you like Realms of Bondage, Bastards Bondage, Bonds of Ecstasy, or The Bond Maid's Tale, none of which James Bond. Sorry if that gets you
No, it's all right. As long as I don't record myself doing that search, we're
The
fine.
video's no longer going to YouTube, it's going to Pornhub.
Okay, so asked this question of the other two. It's been a weird year where remakes have kind of been at the forefront of success stories, which is very rare. We've had Dead Space, we've had Silent Hill 2, and of course we had the Resident Evil 4 remake from a few years ago. So, with that in mind, what remake do you want to see in 2025?
So, annoyingly, I thought the first game that I thought of was Max Payne. I realised there is already a Max Payne remake in the works, so I am very excited for that.
Think. It probably...
Oh,
yeah.
there's going to be.
I know.
There's going to be.
And I will be
He's
there
already-
for a midnight release.
It was almost my very first game on PlayStation 2. I had a choice of that and The Thing. And the only reason I bought The Thing, which funny enough has been remastered this year as well, last year, sorry. The only reason I bought The Thing was because at the time Max Payne was £15 and The Thing was £30, and I was getting the PlayStation 2, like I was buying it, so it was
Right.
like, oh well, you get a free game with it, so you may as well get the more expensive game.
Yeah, that's fine.
So I got The Thing. Product of its time. I've not played the remake though. Is it any good?
From what I've heard, it's like a proper one-for-one. All they've done is they've taken the base game, improved the camera controls, but kept everything else. So, for purists, they'll love it.
Fair enough. In which case, I've got two games that I think would make for interesting remakes. The first one is Half-Life 1. So, from the ground up remake, and I know there's the Black Mesa mod game, and that's really good. I've heard very good things about that. But I'm talking from the ground up remake of Half-Life 1 from the original Valve developers, I think would be incredible. I think that they've learned so much from when they first made that game back in 19 freezing cold.
Jesus Christ, yeah.
I'm sure I don't think it's 98, but it's not far off that date.
Not far off at all, no.
No.
God, we're right.
To now, I think that they would do a stellar job
It would
of
also give them a reason
recreating.
not to make 3.
Yeah,
Congratulations,
yeah.
guys.
There's been lots of weird hints and stuff that Valve have been doing recently, like going back to the original voice actors and doing like mini documentaries with them and stuff. So I don't know. I'd be interested to see what Valve comes out with, but I don't think they'll be doing anything else in Half-Life. I would be surprised if they did, because it would never live up to people's expectations, and I think that's what they're worried about.
Yeah.
They probably also are making enough money, doing enough with Steam and all that sort of stuff, so I don't imagine they'll be actually making games for the foreseeable. The other games that I thought would be interesting as remakes are the original Fallout 1 and 2.
Oh,
As point-and-click adventure games, but just with a bit of polish to them, some quality of life things, some, a decent sort of checkpoint feature rather than just saving and losing all of your progress for hours and hours and hours because you didn't save, as was the style at the time.
Are you getting flashbacks to when you streamed all of them?
Yes, I am. Or, Fallout 1 making the beginning a bit more interesting so you don't immediately die to rats. Because that's a thing. If you go look up the first Fallout, the very first thing you do is you get into a fight with a rat. It does not tell you what to do. It does not tell you how to fight, how to defend yourself. And it is very easy to die to the very first enemy of the game in the first 20 or so seconds of that game. I think that going back to those areas as a polished point and click, or if you wanted to go down the route of Fallout 3 and the subsequent ones of doing it first person but just using the same locations and the same sort of story beats, you could do that as well. But I think that taking the point and click aspect and just polishing it up and making it look pretty, adding in quality of life, I think that would be really interesting.
I mean, you could do a really good job with the Baldur's Gate 3 style, as in not the art style. I mean the visual style of really detailed environments with a camera that you can move around, but it's always on top of you.
Yeah, exactly that. I think Baldur's Gate 3 has shown that people are still interested in that kind of style of gameplay. It's not all first-person shooters or third-person shooters. There's still people who are quite happy to play that sort of point-and-click style game. Yeah. And I think something like Fallout would benefit from that remake, because most people's experience of Fallout, people's earliest experiences of Fallout, is Fallout 3. Well, it's not necessarily bad. I think that you're missing a lot out of rich storytelling and very early storytelling from Fallout 1 and 2.
Yeah, that's a good shout, actually, because there have been other franchises like Wasteland that do the Fallout thing from that kind of perspective.
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure there must be some modders that have tried to remake 1 and 2.
I would have thought so.
Yeah, but using the Fallout 3 on New Vegas engine. It's just a question of getting Bethesda to actually do it, because there's no way they're going to give it to anybody else.
No, absolutely. I think Bethesda would have to go... Well, Bethesda might do that thing where they subcontract out, to the equivalent of... is it Bloober Team that did the Silent Hill 2 remake? You might get something like that, especially if they're just, if it is just going to be a quick polish up. They don't need to rewrite anything.
But yeah, you're right. The early Fallout games had some of the most biting and innovative storytelling methods at the time. I remember watching your streams, and it's like, oh my god, I missed out on this because I didn't have a PC that played those games. My dad was still golf, so that's a really good shout. Admittedly, I think the Half-Life one would be funnier just to see people's reaction, saying, "So you're not going to make 3 then?" And then just watch Gabe Newell try to defend the decision.
It's like the ultimate in blue ballsing from the gaming industry, isn't it? It's the ultimate edging experience is to play through Half-Life 1 all the way to Episode 2, and then not tell anyone that Episode 3 exists.
Yeah.
So the next one is Cookies. You laugh, I'll keep that in.
Damn you, editing!
The next question is technically a two-parter, but it's a two-parter where one part is for you two, and the other part is for me and Smee. Both of you have spawned children.
Allegedly.
And there's a big push for games that are suitable for all ages, or at least family games are coming back. So, with that in mind, and remember how you guys were first introduced to gaming, what games do you guys want to introduce gaming to your children? Yeah. What game are you looking for?
So, I think that we were introduced to gaming at a very lucky time. Where every year games got better than the year before, like without fail. But also we were in a very safe space. So to own a game, you had to go to a game store with your parents who would buy it for you. And so I consider myself very blessed that we didn't grow up with that much money, but enough that we could get a game every 3, 4, 5 months, which was by those standards amazing. And so I was exposed to games that had sort of been curated by my parents to be amazing, which I think was really, really lucky. So the two games that I remember, Free Space 1, I mentioned Free Space 2 earlier, because my dad was a big old sci-fi nerd, so he got that for me. But it was brilliant, and that got me into like first-person shooting. I mean, it was a space game, but yeah, it's a first-person shooting game. And a game called Caesar 3, where you have to build a Roman city. The things that I've always loved in gaming is I want a bit of a challenge. I want to be facing someone, but I also want to get to the end of it and feel like something, like I've made something, like it's a positive outcome. Yeah. You know, at the end of it, you know, you build a city and you're like, oh, hero, and then move on to the next one. And so I'm going to say something that's incredibly generic, but I also think is true, which is I think an amazing game for kids is Minecraft.
Oh, yeah. Someone was going to say it. Well,
yeah, I think it's an amazing game for kids. Yeah. Minecraft is good for everyone, if you're into that kind of game. Not everyone is. But especially when you're offline, it's really safe. It is child-friendly. There's a bit of peril, but it's pretty mild peril, and actually you can dial down the settings with mods to make it incredibly mild peril. You have a free world to explore, but it's fun, it's exciting, it's bright and colourful, but then as you get older you can make it more and more and more challenging as time goes by. You set yourself your own challenges, there's community challenges, there's hundreds of mods out there. You know, you can download the whole of Middle Earth, you know, whatever you want. But also, fundamentally, the principle of Minecraft, unless you're some sort of like, you go in and like torture villagers, is at the end of it you have something that you didn't have before. You know, you build a castle, you build a house, you build a farm. So it has enough peril to be difficult, but not so much as to be impossible. It is easy to learn the gameplay loop, but fundamentally you can make it whatever you want it to be. And it teaches a little bit about physics, a little bit about building, you know, at a basic level, but, you know, kids build blocks, you know, we're not expecting, you know, they're not structural engineers. At the end of it, they turn around and go, hey Dad, look what I made, I've got a castle here, and you're like, that's absolutely wicked, good job. So Minecraft is the first game outside of your classic baby games that I will probably introduce my child to.
And you're going to have a film with Jack Black in it to show them as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's a whole new bag of horrors.
The baby's not old enough for TV yet, so I've got all that terrible stuff to come.
Moose?
I think, so Snake touched on a good point. We grew up in an age of games where they were generally inherently safe. So I came to gaming relatively late. I didn't get a console, a PlayStation 2, until I was 15, 16, which by that age was actually...
That was, what, 40 years ago? Yeah, true. I shot myself in the foot there.
And that was sort of arguably the first generation of console that could go online, but you had to go and get the network adapter, and again, there weren't that many games that were online. Forums were still of this age where forums were useful, people were nice on them, and actually people went there to, you know, to have a good time and to actually share knowledge. The internet wasn't what it is today. You could go and play an online game as a as a minor, and you could have a good time on that game, and you weren't berated by the community for being new to the game or slower or whatever. You can't do that with today's games. There is so much racism, there is so much hate, there's so much vileness spewing everywhere, that modern day online PC games, or even console games, are an absolute minefield. And there's a reason that all these companies keep bringing in chat filters and like toxicity bans and all the rest of it. There was no toxicity bans on SOCOM 2 or whatever online game you played back there. And the community, there just wasn't the level of hate. So as a child, it was a relatively safe place to be, all things considered. And that's not the case today. So if I was going to introduce my kid to a game, it would not be an online game, or they would not be going online until they were much, much older.
Fair.
And that severely limits the level of games that I think they could play. I remember playing Grand Theft Auto when I was younger, mostly because your father bought you Grand Theft Auto when you were underage, and I had to come around to your house to play it because my parents wouldn't let me buy it.
I was just driving in the ambulance,
Yes, well,
running people over, but you know.
in Grand Theft Auto 3 and in Vice City, yes, there was gore, but it was comical gore. It was pixelated gore.
Yeah.
There wasn't the level of gore. Games today, if you blow someone up, you see all the leg parts go that way, and it's like, ooh, that's not very nice. Whereas in Grand Theft Auto, you were like, oh, all of a sudden the pixel just isn't there. So again, it was very, very different. It was very relatively safe. I wouldn't introduce my kids to Grand Theft Auto categorically. I would probably bring them into something on the likes of like Mario Kart, like one of the racing Mario Karts.
Yeah.
Bandicoot. I remember that. Sonic the Hedgehog, I guess, was another one similar to that. But in all honesty, I probably wouldn't bring them into a console. I would probably bring them into something handheld, along the line of Mario, Pokemon, or one of those type of games that are designed primarily for the younger audience. I mean, Pokemon is aimed at mostly younger people. There's a lot of older people play as well. That's designed to be a sort of safer environment. Yeah, my wife plays the hell out of it.
Yeah.
Don't mind.
Yeah, so good, isn't it?
One of those games that's designed to be played by children. Little Big Planet was probably one of the biggest ones for the PlayStation 3.
Yeah.
I never really
that's
played
so
it, but
good.
I remember that.
Stephen Fry.
Yeah. And even games now where I think you've played it, I can't remember what it's called. It's called a Unicorn or Banana or something. The one that you and Ada played together.
Kiwi.
Kiwi.
You've spoiled my reveal for the next question.
I had to go searching for that goddamn footage.
Edit that, damn it.
There are games, things like Overcooked or some of the cooking games, which are inherently, there are two players, so you could play them with your dad or something, but there isn't the level of failure or peril or anything like that. Possibly some of the driving games, but again, nothing that's going to be too complex, and I think finding a simplistic driving game these days is very, very difficult. So I would probably, like I say, I would go back to the likes of like Mario Kart. The Wii doesn't exist anymore, does it? But that type of gaming, to get them into it, and if it's something they're interested in, then they can branch out from there. But certainly these days, by the time my kids are of an age, like a teenage age, I mean, we're talking another 10, 12, 15 years. I don't know where gaming will have gone in that next decade and a half. But I can tell you one thing, and that is that toxicity is not going to go away. It is only going to get worse because of the whole things in the world, politics and everything. We're not going to get into that. But toxicity is only going to get worse, and they need to be of an age where they are able to understand that before they get, thingy to it. Because I mean, we've seen, there's so much cyberbullying and stuff online now that. Video games should be a bit of fun. There should be some way to relax, and there are people out there that use them as, quite harsh bullying tools. And that's not what gaming. It's not what gaming should be about, and it's not what gaming was. And I think that's really sad that it's changed in that direction.
Before I go on my spiel, I would say that you've got really good remasters of the Crash Bandicoot original trilogy and the Spyro trilogy as well. So I'd highly recommend them for you too. I do feel a little bit mean because the version for me and Smee is the games where we'd introduce your children to piss you off. And I have genuinely thought this one through. I'm not going to go down the easy route of giving them a copy of San Andreas. A, because that's an entirely highly irresponsible, and it was no. What's
That
that?
would culture them. That would
It
culture
would, it would culture. And it's also too easy because, I mean, admittedly, I heard most of my swear words in a car when I was being driven to school, so I wasn't put off by the swearing.
That's breakneck speed.
Yeah. The game, if I was doing this to annoy you two, annoy is the word, not cause harm, annoy, I want to point that out.
Mhm.
I would give them a copy of FIFA or the new EAFC and say,
No.
there's this
No,
thing
you take
called,
that back.
there's this
You
thing
take that back, Vaughn.
There's this mode called Ultimate Team, and if you get your daddy's credit card, you can make. And there's
Right.
a
9 o'clock. That is my bedtime. I'm gonna go. Thanks for that. Lovely to talk to you all.
and there's a 3-point system as to why. One, and this is the most obvious, it would get them into football, which would tick you off on a cellular level. Two, it's the Ultimate Teams thing is just a it's like collectible cards, but they're not even real. Again, annoy you at a cellular level. And three, that question is, Dad, can I buy this pack for like £5? So, yeah, I'll be okay once. Once turns into 10 times. 10 times turns into a mortgage payment.
You've got a good point. I think, again, that's a big thing, is that microtransactions are only going to get worse. And they are never going to go away. It's one of those things that you just have to accept that. But it's also one of those things that, having that we grew up with them, it's knowing that if you buy your child a first console, you do not link
your
credit cards to it, or you make sure that you've got certain controls on your banking app that say, if X amount is spent on this store, it blocks it automatically, and I get a notification to say, you know, did you make that transaction? Which I'm sure you must be able to do, because I mean, if I try and
I can, from experience, yes. Every time, because my dad's credit card was linked to my PS3. Every time I had to ask permission, and he had to go in and do his code. So even back then, it was simplified. The issue,
if you've got a Barclays Kids account, you basically can load money on like instantaneously. So if they're like, "Oh, I need $5.99," you just go bang $5.99, and there's no overdraft. So once they spent it, that's it.
So yeah, a virtual space or something like that, I can do it with Starlink. So I think that would be an absolute critical thing to do.
You do it with Starlink.
Starlink, the bank.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, after banging on about Elon Musk, getting Starlink would be
Can I just
amusing.
finish my answer first?
No, you can't. We're talking over you.
Oh, shut up.
Yes.
Also, the fact that you've got the EA one, which is just the big bad, and they're never going away. They might have lost the FIFA license, but they're going to keep making football games because they can do it. They've got the tech and they've got the power to do it. But FIFA themselves have said they're going to release their own game. And if you know anything about FIFA as an organization, a charitable organization that chooses to have a 50 billion pot of money as a reserve, yeah, fucking right. This is coming from a football fan here as well. They're going to make their own video games. Lord knows how bad that's going to be. So if I was looking to annoy you, that's what I would do. It'd be very easy to switch, because you just say, let me see that game, and throw it out the window.
You've got a good point, actually. There is no shortage of video games that would be inappropriate for children.
Mm-hmm.
Manhunt.
Yeah.
Grand Theft Auto.
Call of Duty.
Any of those bondage games that Snake mentioned. Any of the board games on Steam.
I'll report back how inappropriate for children they are in a few days.
Larry Magna Cum Laude. There is no shortage of video games that are wildly inappropriate for children. But yet you have genuinely thought about that answer, and you've come up with one that's more annoying.
In the UK, it is 3+. A game where you can legitimately spend unlimited money if you're not careful. It's 3+.
But it's not, the rating is because of the game content, not because of what it can do to your credit card. Yeah.
I mean, admittedly,
it's a good shout.
It's a good answer that annoys you both immensely. And that's why I thought this through. I tried.
So for this next question, I gave the other two the option to find a game that they want to introduce their children to, because, you know, parents, it's going to come up eventually. They had very wholesome answers. I, on the other hand, had to pick a game that would annoy them, and I decided to introduce their children to gambling in the form of EAFC. What would you like to annoy them with?
So the obvious answer for me would be Fortnite or Roblox or anything that has that extra monetization element so that it's, Daddy, can I have some Roblox, please? or whatever. I don't know much about those games. I've not actually played either of them. And that's not me being cool, just I don't know. They don't seem my type of game. What I've decided instead is to go down a wholly different awkward route and introduce either of their kids to the Leisure Suit Larry series of games. Not because they're good games. They are dreadful, awful games that should be played by no one. Well, at least the one on Xbox anyway. That one was dreadful and awful. I don't know about the point and click ones. They might be quite good. But just the idea that there's like, Daddy, Uncle Greasy got me this game. Oh, did he? Oh, okay. You can't play that. Why? What? And I would be solely responsible for the birds and the bees talk, and I think that's worth it. Just to be the corrupting influence in somebody's life. I think that would be funny.
See, admittedly, they were like, you could have gone down the simple route of, say, Manhunt or GTA, and I was like, it's too easy. I didn't think of Leisure Suit Larry because I thought might be too far, but the fact that you brought it back to like a conversation they're going to have with them at some point, that is genius. That is playing the long game properly well.
That's it. There's at one point Snake is going to walk in on his child, and they're going to be playing Leisure Suit Larry, and it's going to be some sort of weird mini game that involves titillation of some kind.
Yes.
And he's going to have to go, Christ, I'm going to have to say something about this, aren't I?
You, sir, have played this game beautifully.
Okay, start again. Go. I'm going to sit here very quietly.
Right. So, this year's been, I would argue, okay for gaming. New releases and everything. That is genuinely terrifying. It's like a weeping angel from Doctor Who. But
sorry, I'll be more normal.
And I know that you two have had less free time than me. Holy crap, that's going to be my sleep nightmare for the next few weeks. And that's why I'm going to start. We're going to go through our favourite game of the year that we've played. Has to be one you played. That's an obvious point. Starting with me, I do want to do two honourable mentions. One game that we've discussed a lot, which is Helldivers 2. It has been fun. There has been a bit of a break, though. It was everything for like a couple of months, and then it kind of dropped off, and I found other stuff, and I dipped into other things. And then all of a sudden, God, it's back! And it is literally easy neuron activation. Shoot things, get bigger stuff, shoot more things, shoot bigger stuff. Wait.
I'm going to agree with you.
Yeah. The other honourable mention, and it really pains me to do it, seeing as I piss on this franchise more than Ollie pisses on 2142. Black Ops 6. I hate to admit it. The campaign's actually good. It's not just good, it may be the best Call of Duty campaign ever made.
Wow, that's a big statement.
It has
Call of Duty have some excellent campaigns.
There's one level in particular, and I know Ol's played it as well, where you're in a... Yeah, he knows the level.
I don't like the level.
There's a level where you're in a facility and you're devoid of all your weapons to begin with. It's the only level where you have access to a grappling hook that you get later on. And then when I first started playing it, I thought, this is a really crap gimmick, and then it turned into one of the most tense levels I've ever played in Call of Duty. And I put it up there with Clean House from the Modern Warfare 2019. The multiplayer is Call of Duty multiplayer. It's okay. You'll get some fun times out of it, but then you come off it like, oh, I feel dirty. I need a fucking shower to get this off me. So it's not been my favourite, but it's just been a surprise. My actual favourite has been Alan Wake 2. It came out the year before, played the main story, adored it. This year, starting this year, they released their 2 expansion packs. The first is Night Springs, which is in-game they have their parody of the Twilight Zone. So it's a really weird, and like I forgot what the term is. It's the same thing. It's like short stories in TV form. You get really odd concepts. It's really creepy. They take that concept and go nuts. So we've got the kooky diner server from the main story going through her version of events, where she's just walking around with a shotgun, and she is legitimately some of the best combat in the entire game.
Babe, I got an army of people that hate that hack almost as much as I do. They're ready to die if it stops him from writing another crappy book. What do you got?
I have a shotgun.
Well, Wait, that's a real shotgun?
You've got the episode where you're stuck in Coffee World, which is their very funny theme park, as a character from another game in the Remedy-verse, which also gives us a lovely, lovely sense of control too. Can't wait for that as well. And then the third one, you're playing as Tim Breaker, and you're skipping between realities, including going into a comic book world. It's basically Remedy just being allowed to do whatever they want with the IP, and I loved it. The second one was called The Lake House. Genuinely the scariest hour or so I've played in the entire of both games. There's a room, so you're basically you play as a secondary character from the main game, Agent Estevez, from the Bureau of Control. You're sent to investigate a facility near Hope Springs. You go in, it's all gone to shit, obviously, because it's Alan Wake. Everything goes to shit in Alan Wake. But the crazy rooms thing, it's a 5-floor thing, and each floor has its own scare. So one in particular has paintings all over the wall, and creatures literally come out of those paintings without warning, and you cannot kill them.
I already don't like it.
You can't kill them until you found a weapon that you can only reach after clearing 2 more floors. It's like, if people were like concerned that Alan Wake had gone from, survival horror to a bit more action orientated, the Lake House is just pure survival horror. It's also some of the most difficult gameplay in Alan Wake 2, I'd argue. And to me, the fact that Alan Wake 2 has only just made its money back is a bit sad, because Epic own them, and I really don't want them to say, well, we know we gave you all this, promises that we'd let you make Control 2 and you can do whatever you want with all your over games, but it's just not worth the money. It's like, I want Control 2. I want Alan Wake 2 to be seen as a classic, which it is. It's so good. And there's a good chance we might not get it. If we do get more stuff from Remedy, brilliant. But that's my favourite game of this year. And it wasn't even a game, it was DLC. So I'm just like the Game Awards in that respect. Moose, go with you next.
So honourable mention, Helldivers 2 was a lot of fun. I've been playing Sea Power. To give it its full title, it's Sea Power, Naval Combat in the Missile Age. It's the sort of spiritual successor to Cold Waters by Triassic Games. Really, really good. And the great thing is they've embraced the community and said, yes, we're going to allow mods, and here is like the map editor, here is the mission creator, go crazy with it. And on Steam Workshop, and the level of maps and or not maps rather, the level of missions that the community has started pumping out is insane. It's fantastic, and they've given you the map of the world, and you can have missions wherever you want. So people have already done everything to do with, China's invaded Taiwan, you've got missions around there, North Korea invade South Korea, whatever you want, Cuban Missile Crisis, the whole works, everything, really, really good. They've got a lot of scope in the game for more DLCs, so the game cuts off at around 1980-ish. at the moment, but they've sort of hinted that there will be DLCs bringing out some of the later US Navy vessels and stuff like that, and British ones and so on and so forth. Community's already started putting out some mods, but they have said the main one, the guy has said it works mostly. There's still a couple of like texture issues, but he said it makes the game really, really one-sided.
Yeah.
So he said it's not very balanced because all of a sudden NATO steamrolls anyone else because of the level of upgrades they get to their radar, sonar, and vertical launch missile systems. It's like you can now spam with 10 ships. You can put 100 Tomahawks in the air in about 2 minutes. It's insane, but love that game. It's going to have, it's in early access, it's going to have a full campaign, which is coming. They're still working on it, and they're putting out little patches, fixing bugs and stuff like that, and the game is going to grow. So it's been in development for a couple of years, but it's only a very small team that does it. But I'm really looking forward to seeing where that game goes, because that's a lot of fun. But I think my main one overall I've really enjoyed is Ready or Not. Didn't come out this year, so whether that counts.
I mean, that wasn't the point. It was just the game.
Have really pushed it. I think Dark Waters was really, really good. The additional weapons, really like them. All the character customization stuff, that's really good. Just the general level of like how the game has progressed is now at a stage where it is really, really good. With the extra bits and bobs they're doing, like having the helicopters come in, that's all really good. There's now a decent amount of content in there that there's a lot to do in it. So I've really, really enjoyed that one, and that's good. And they're porting it to Unreal Engine 5, I think.
I didn't know that.
Already, or if they're doing, they've said they're going to port it, and obviously that's going to then take it to the next level in terms of graphics, and I think that'll be really, really good. It's already a pretty good looking game, I'll say. And I think pushing it to Unreal Engine 5 will really, really make the difference. So yeah, we'll go with that.
I mean, admittedly, Ready or Not already has a very strong art direction, which makes up for any of the like rough texture here and there. But seeing that on Unreal 5 is going to be pretty cool. That I'm interested in seeing. Snake, your favourite game of this year?
So I've got two answers. One of them, they're both in the same genre. I'm going a little bit off-piste compared to what we've been talking about previously. The first one is Kiwi, spelt Kew, Kiwi. Anyway, the birds, the Kiwis.
The New Zealanders.
All the New Zealanders indeed. But it's spelled Kew, Kiwi.
Yeah.
It is a two-player cozy game to be designed to be played on a single screen, where you play as a little Kiwi and you work in a telegraph station in like 1940s outback Australia, sending messages. And it's absolutely ridiculous, and it's hilariously good fun. Very like Little Big Planet vibes in terms of the sort of the gameplay. Each level is about 3 minutes long. You've got to do like a little task. Very funny, lovely, bright, colourful graphics. But you can play online, but it's designed to be played with someone sitting next to you. Best played with two controllers, but it's designed again that you can play it with a single keyboard. You don't need a mouse. So it's really just drop it and go. Second one is a game that me and my wife are about halfway through, called It Takes Two.
Oh, cool. I know that.
Again, split screen, you play as, I don't want to give too much away, but it's in the intro video, so I don't think it will be. You play as two dolls that are trying to survive living in their own house. But everything is through the imagination of a child, so it's all pretty crazy. So like, the bees run a underground army fighting against the squirrels and stuff like this. And you've got to help one side of them. You start off playing as like the resistance, and then you realise they're not as good as they say they are. Controversial. Why those two games? Because they are, since we finished Little Big Planet a few years ago, that's the first set of games that my wife comes up to me in the evening and is like, I'd love to sit down and do some gaming with you. Which, we're talking about games tonight. I love gaming. It's one of my big passions, big hobby. Don't get as much time to do it as I'd like. But actually then, my wife comes and wants to play with me, and it gets her interested and involved in gaming. And also, slight side effect is that she then looks at gaming with a positive light, which means I get to do more of it. So great. So those are my two, Kiwi and It Takes Two. And if you've got a partner at home, I think they can both be played online, but they're really very much designed to be played sitting next to each other. If you've got a partner at home, I highly recommend them, both cheap as chips on Steam, and are just a really nice way of connecting with someone in your life who might not otherwise be a big gamer. And they are absolutely designed to just pick up and play. Like, you don't need to be good at gaming to enjoy them.
So there's another point on It Takes Two. It's made by a company that have a really cool share pass system where only one of you has to buy it. And then even if it's online, you just invite them to play. They also made No Way Out, which is like Shawshank Redemption style Prison Escape for a more serious version. And they announced another game called Split Fiction, where you play as authors in trying to survive each other's stories. So one is a fantasy writer, the other is a sci-fi writer. It looked pretty good, actually. So that's something to look forward to in the future. I know I already had my go, but there is one other honorable mention. Alien Dark Descent. Real-time strategy, XCOM style camera, aliens where you play as Marines trying to survive. So good. It came out for PlayStation. It's one of the free games for December for PlayStation Plus. I'd been umming and ahhing buying it for a while, and I'm so glad I got a chance to try it for just my monthly fee. It's so fun. It's hard. It's very tough. It's not for casual. It's for like sit in, lock in, spend an hour on one mission.
Every Aliens game I've ever played has been unbelievably difficult. I remember it was like Colonial Marines or something.
Did you play Colonial Marines?
Yeah, I'm not convinced I ever beat a level. I would just like walk around briefly and then die.
I mean, Smee sat in the room while I screamed at isolation because, Christ, that was scary. But yeah, highly recommend Dark Descent if you get a chance to play it.
Game of the year. Just to give you some context, Ollie said Sea Power, which was like that another naval combat thing that isn't World of Warships. I know, shock horror. And Snake said Kiwi for the second year in a row, which means my job of editing this is going to be a lot easier. I said Alan Wake 2, the Night Springs, and the Lake House DLC because it was proper survival horror again. But what
I forgot about Alan Wake 2.
Well, technically, those DLCs came out last year. The full game came out the year before, but you know. So what about you? What was your favourite game of 2024?
I don't get a lot of chance to play games because of the nature of my job, because of the nature of, you know, I only have a laptop, so it can only run certain games. I don't have like a mega powerful laptop that harnesses the sun to power games. It's decent gaming laptop, but it's a decent gaming laptop from about 4 years ago. So it does the job, but it's not stellar. But the one game that I kept playing while I was working away from home, because it was such a good game to play, and even though it was potato quality on my laptop, I wanted to play it, was Helldivers 2.
Hey!
I had such a good time playing that game, even on like potato quality screen. It was amazing to just pick up and play with not just XVI, some of my other friends as well. It was funny. It had like a sort of dark element to it. But it was also like very humorous as well. The community seemed pretty decent. Like there just seemed to be this very sort of like a camaraderie that you don't typically get with games. You know, the fact that the story is so heavily influenced by the player base, and the player base are like, actually, because the story is so involved, that yeah, I know about the you know, people know about Malvallon Creek, is it?
Malevolon. But yeah.
Malevolon Creek.
Just Space Vietnam. That's the best way to describe it.
People know about Space Vietnam, and people know about the most recent one as well. Wasn't there one recently to do with the Illuminate?
Yeah. Oh God.
There was another Vietnam 2 Electric Boogaloo that happened. with Helldivers 2. The fact that they embraced what happened with the review bombings and sort of made it like turned it around and made it into a meme. But yeah, I love that when a game has a community like that. It's one of the reasons I love speedrunning. Speedrunning seems to have a very wholesome community behind it. It doesn't matter what game, it seems to have a very decent community behind it. And communities can make or break a game. If you don't have a community, especially in an online game like Helldivers 2, then you don't have a game. You have an empty shell. Don't get me wrong, Helldivers 2 is not my favorite game of all time. It's not my favorite game ever. But for the sake of this year and for the sake of the amount of time I get to dedicate to playing, I've really enjoyed it. I think it's been an amazing experience.
Because it doesn't require a lot of time as well. Because it's just literally jump in to a match, dive in, literally, and you've done it in about 15-20 minutes if you want.
Yeah, it's got that sort of very tailorable experience as well. So if you want to play a very, very easy match, you play on the first 3 difficulties. If you want a bit more of a challenge, you can go up from there. And then if you're absolutely insane, you can play on like Suicide and Helldiver mode and stuff like that. I like games where you can tailor how difficult it is to a very large degree. You know, like it's one of the reasons I never gelled with Soulsborne games all that much. Was it's hard or nothing, and for whoever enjoys that, that's absolutely fine. But for me, I like to be able to experience games differently depending on the day of the week. I've recently just finished, as of today, the new Indiana Jones game.
Right, the Great Circle.
Yeah. So that that has like a normal difficulty, but then it's got puzzle difficulty as well, very similar to Silent Hill. Yeah. So you can do like an easy or hard puzzle difficulty. But then it's also got this. It's kind of like a third difficulty or a sort of subset of that, where each you've got like different hub worlds that you can explore around, and you can tell the game whether you want to be told where to go or not. Okay. So one of the criticisms that people have of something like Fallout is you just get told where to go and you're always following the mission marker. You don't get to like really cognitively think about where you need to be next. Indiana Jones gives you the option to either just be told where to go, it just gives you a little indicator, or you get to work it out for yourself. For me, I want to be told where to go. Sometimes I don't have the brain power to figure it out. I just want to play a game where I get to punch Nazis in the face. And it gave me that opportunity. It had a really nice story that was really fun. The stealth elements were really good. There is gunplay in it, but it's not heavily relied upon. And the platforming is all really fun. Like genuinely, it's been a really good game to play.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's well worth it. But the scalable difficulty is what I really liked about that game. It's told me where to go. But I can make the combat a bit harder, and I appreciate that it gives me that option. I like that Helldivers does that as well, where it's like, you just want to go around and raise some flags and kill like the base enemy? Fine, absolutely. But if you want something a little bit harder than that, but isn't like mind-blowingly harder than that, then here's like difficulty level 3, whatever that is, easy or normal or whatever medium, it ends up being. Is it medium? Yeah. It's been a while since I picked it up.
Yeah. You know, you want a really bad example of that kind of direction. Did you ever play the Getaway games?
No, but I know of them.
Right. If I told you there's no minimap because they wanted everything to look quite realistic, they didn't want a UI, they tell you where to go using the turn signals indicators. But because systems back then weren't that great, you could basically just go around in a circle, constantly turning left or right. Oh my god, it was so annoying. It was so annoying.
Golden Circle's difficulty is a little bit better than
Yeah,
it does
I would
tell you.
hope so, yeah.
Despite a lot of
Actually, that's better, because now I've no longer got this bright sun behind my head.
So it's fair to say that when Helldivers 2 came out at the beginning of this year, it exploded. It then took that explosion and threw itself off a cliff thanks to Sony's brilliant idea of a PSN account. But with the newest update, bringing in the Illuminate, and a win at the Game Awards for Best Multiplayer Game, and it had some stiff competition, do we think the hype is still worth it? And are you still willing to give Helldivers a chance? We'll start with Snake this time.
Okay. So, was Helldivers 2 worth it? A loaded question. Helldivers 2 was fantastic on release for the same reason that we were talking about those remakes. The games we mentioned in those remakes did something relatively unique that no one's managed to do again as well as those originals. People have done other things well, but not those things. Helldivers 2, I think one of the things that made it hit the mark so hard is it came out at a time when the humour that they were putting out still felt like parody. The problem is, it doesn't feel like a parody anymore. It just feels like the inevitable outcome of the way politics is going. And one of the things that made Helldivers quite difficult is I was playing it, and I was listening to it in the background, and I was like, am I listening to a Trump speech? I was like, oh, no, sorry, Helldivers is fired up. Oh, Jesus. So I think it came out at a perfect moment. And I think one of the things people loved about it so much was its humour. Conversely, once I'd played, 20 or 30 hours, I felt like I'd played the gameplay loop as much as there was to play of it. And now I admit there's now a new enemy out, but the game is now old enough that I struggle to say that's enough to reinvigorate it, for me at least. And actually, the gameplay loop, whilst it was good and enjoyable, it didn't actually leave all that much room for creativity. There was a couple of different call-ins, which there was pretty obvious good ones for certain maps, certain enemies, bad ones. And kind of once you'd mastered which ones to use when to go around an enemy, when to fire a couple of rockets, there wasn't that much to it. And so my feeling of Helldivers was it was excellent when it came out. They did an amazing job captivating that moment in history. But I suspect if Helldivers came out in 6 months' time, or if it had come out 2 years earlier, it wouldn't have been quite so good. So that's my theory.
I'll go next, because I think out of the three of us here, and I can't speak to Smee just yet, I'll let you know when I've recorded his sections, I actually managed to get on when the Illuminate was still a thing, because this is the funny thing. They were announced on the game trailers, so as of now, about 10 days ago. There was a major order where community was basically tasked with complete so many defensive missions against them. They cleared it within a week. This is what intrigues me so much about Helldivers 2. Despite all the problems, and there have been some serious problems, which I'll get into in a second, the community has stuck with it, even to the point where they're willing to review bomb it on Steam to make their voices heard. When you've convinced that many people that your game is worth fighting for, let alone just playing, that is impressive. The fact it wasn't up for Game of the Year when a remake and a DLC were, is odd.
Yeah, I felt like the whole Game of the Year, it is political. It's obviously 100%. Political. It's not a popularity contest. It is essentially experts. How expert do you think they are or not? And they certainly have their own opinions.
And I think this is the difference between, especially me and you, Snake. I can still go back onto it, jump in a random server, and enjoy the hell out of it. Because with this new enemy type, they've properly forced people to think about what weapons they use. I used to go in with the rapid fire laser rifle, the Uzi backup, and a 500 kg bomb for the memes. Now I genuinely have to think about what weapons I use against them, because the laser rifle is good when you're up against bugs and the automatons, but when you're getting swarmed by about 15 or 20 zombie-like enemies with a couple of other enforcers behind them with shields and rifles, it overheats quickly. So I've started using some of the DMRs, some of the shotguns are very good for that, especially with the new armor set they've brought out, which extends the magazine of all primaries and increases your reloading. You know, they after the can't remember exactly what the premium war bond was called, but the one where they introduced a flame style or flame theme, where they nerfed the flame weapons, is
an amusing choice.
And this time they said they've given people melee weapons, and they've not nerfed anything. They've made everything feel right, and it appears now that Sony have kind of like taken their managerial hands off it a little bit, and have let Arrowhead properly go nuts with the patch update. So you can now aim and fire when you're jetpacking, which for people with flamethrower weapons have learnt the hard way that doesn't always go well. I think if they keep the gaffs down to a minimum, and they keep updating it, and they keep the faith in the game, in the player base, this could go on for a long, long time. And I still stand by that. I'm the one out of us four that called it, that we should at least give it a go. I don't get many things right. I claim that one.
Of all the things to get right, you really did pick the right one.
The very niche thing, yes. Moose, your thoughts?
So, I thought it peaked at about 700,000 players, but according to the Steam charts, which I'm on at the moment, it says all-time peak was 458,709, so nearly 460,000, which isn't 700,000, but it's still a lot. It's not far off 500,000 players, and that's just Steam. That's not on PlayStation. So overall, you can probably easily say it had 1 million concurrent players, and that's a lofty height. There are not very many games that can say we've had 1 million players, concurrent players, in one go. Right this second, it's 2038 on the 19th of December. There is 124,071 players in the game right now. That's a lot. Like, that's huge numbers for just Steam. And again, it's a PlayStation game primarily, so there is going to be even more on there. I think they did several things right. The game released, it ran really well on the PC. There was no bug. Well, there was some bugs, which you would expect, but generally they were all fairly small. There was nothing overly game-breaking. It looked pretty good. The gameplay loop was simple enough that people could learn it. People could play a game without too much time being taken out. And there was a real sense of progression early on, which was good. So that got people hooked. The community really helped. As Snake said, they really got into the like the parody element of the marketing, and the marketing and the game blended really well, and the community took that and then ran with it. I mean, you couldn't walk on Instagram in the reels without seeing a meme or a reel, and it was the same on Reddit, it was the same on all social media. Social media was really going with it, and that generated more people into the game, and they got this snowball effect. Yes, they dropped off fairly heftily after that, but I don't think that necessarily is a problem, because they've still, after it dropped off a bit, they've then maintained a fairly stable amount of players. It's not like, I know I always hate on 2042, but if they didn't want to be hating on, they shouldn't have done such a shit job of it. 2042 again peaked at something stupid. I can't remember what it was. It was like 400,000 or 500,000 players, and within a month they were down like 95%, and within another month after that there was like 4 people online. And that was it. And they've never recovered. I mean, they've recovered to a few thousand, but the game is just a shadow of what it should have been. Whereas Helldivers hasn't done that. And then obviously since the new update dropped, they've had another spike of players. So the gameplay loop, although repetitive now, is still quite simple. So that's good. The weapons and stuff have all been, they've been all right. But I think one of the big things they did really well was the DLCs were all, what were they, £8? £7.99?
$7.99.
Oh, $7.99.
If you paid for it.
They were let's be honest, they were single-digit pounds, basically, which means people go, yeah, I'll drop £8 on that. You know, there's not a huge amount of content, but it's not that expensive, which means more people are willing to buy it. And in addition, if you play the game enough, you can get the super credits for free in the missions, which means that you could actually potentially get 1 or 2 DLCs for free. That's really good. There isn't this 17 different types of currency, and you've got to grind it for 17 hours a day just to get 1 golden coin, which will then, and you need 37 golden coins to get the new weapon skin, which does nothing other than give you a golden weapon. So, although there is a grind in the game, it doesn't feel too bad. I haven't played it as much as I thought I would, but I agree. I can jump into it now, have a good couple of games, and it's been really good. Do I think it was worth the hype overall? Yes, I do. I think a lot of people got into the hype and then played it for a bit and went, I'm going to go back to like my core game, because I think, as Snake says, there isn't enough gameplay to be able to sink like 1,000 hours into that game. And I think that gets really, because it just isn't like the storyline. But for a fun co-op shooter where the community, generally speaking, works really well together, even without
100%.
voice stuff. So many games you go online and you're like, why am I playing with monkeys? Why am I playing with
whoa. Careful, you can't use the M word, especially when you talk about multiplayer and Call of Duty. Admittedly,
is there a thing that we don't know because we're...
No, it's just the
online
N word gets thrown around a lot in Call of Duty lobbies.
Just be nice to everyone is the answer.
A lot of games you go in, you play with complete potatoes.
Yeah, that's bad.
Whereas this, it generally felt like it wasn't quite as bad. So yeah, I think they did a really good job overall. I think they deserved the success they got out of that game, and I hope. But I don't think replicating that level of success early on is going to be easy or doable in the same thing. I think they got so many little things right, and that then spawned a lot of like community engagement, and that's what pushed the game over the edge, because there wasn't the marketing for it. It's not like they spent $1 billion on marketing. We saw the trailer and I went, yeah, looks all right, and you were like, no, I really think we should play this game, and we were like, yeah, okay, we'll give it a go. Jumped in, we're like, oh shit, this is really good.
If I can just
Lucian's been talking for too long, and so I'm going to jump in quickly. 2 things to add to what he said. 1, released 57 minutes ago as of recording on PCGamer.com. Only 15% of cumulative Steam time this year was spent on games from 2024. And the other 85% was on games that are older. Something that was really interesting. 40% of all Steam time, so more than twice as much, was spent on games that are more than 8 years old. So to have that many players on Helldivers is actually even more impressive than it first sounds. And to add to that further, the Steam review came out a few days ago, and one of the things they said is the average person only plays 4 games a year, which I think is remarkable. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I can.
If I haven't looked at your Steam review, it's really interesting. Which I think what that tells us is that actually the vast majority of gamers are casual gamers, not hardcore gamers. And so for Helldivers to have that big a fan base, I think is actually, despite the fact that the rest of this time I was a bit negative about it, I think it was really impressive. And to follow up on what we said, I agree that the key that Helldivers has for me that I like is I'll play an hour and I'll be like, that was fun, and I'll drop off. And then a week later I'll play an hour and I'll be like, that was fun, and I'll drop off. And every time I've played it, because it came out in February, I've played about an hour at a time and had a great time, and then been like, done with this for now, and then I'll come back and play another hour, and every time I play it's just as enjoyable as the first time, as long as I don't milk it too hard.
I do have a small business point to make in terms, because I followed the behind the scenes stuff with Sony quite a bit, and I think the Helldivers team might have actually been helped a lot with Concord crashing and burning, because Sony are all in this, we want some live service games, we want our own Call of Duty, where people drop 50 quid on a battle pass and everything. They put a lot of time and money into Concord. We don't really know how much in general. The number being flung around is 400 million over 8 years, and the game lasted
Wow.
2 weeks. 2 weeks. And genuinely, I think that when Sony saw that, they realized, crap, we need to concentrate on what works, and they might just give Arrowhead all of the beans. They'll just say,
Yeah.
you guys clearly know what you're doing right. They might not fix the PSN thing, and there's a part of me that thinks they really shouldn't, because they paid for the damn license. They're the ones that stuck with it. But, you know, it takes it away from people in South America, mainly. But at the same time, they could let Arrowhead go absolutely nuts. Like the next up, you can go to Super Earth now. We're going to fight them all like Last Stand on Super Earth. That would be amazing.
Was it Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 when you're in a trench and you're like, oh, I wonder where I am, and then you pop up and it's the White House?
Yeah.
Like something like that on Helldivers would be absolutely beautiful. Fighting through the Oval Office.
I think, but Snake's got a good point. So again, Steam charts. Most played game on Steam is Counter-Strike 2.
Classic.
It's been there for God knows how long. But that came out in 2012, I think. Counter-Strike 2012. Grand Theft Auto 2015. Rust 2018. PUBG 2017. Marvel's Rivals December this year.
That was the big thing that killed off Concord.
And Dota 2 2013. Helldivers 2 is currently 9th and the all-time most played games on Steam. So
not even Black Myth
probably
Wukong
good
in that? No? Maybe this year when it was released, but
I don't know, but I'm scrolled. Unless I've gone past it, I can't see it. Basically, he's got you know for a game that came out this year, it's done remarkably well and it's held.
Yeah.
It's got more players as a 24-hour peak than Call of Duty.
Wow.
that's
The 24-hour peak. The all-time peak is about 40,000 less.
the fact it
But
beat
given
Call
how
of Duty
big
even
Call
for
of Duty
one
is-
day reaffirms my faith in humanity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Helldivers 2, the game that kind of took everyone by surprise, even us. I think I put a link on the trailer at the beginning of the year. We all thought, and then we played it, and holy crap, it turned out to be really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
It had some of its own troubles, kind of dove off a cliff thanks to Sony. Good job, guys. But it's kind of picked itself back up with the Illumina update. And to be fair, it's still got quite a bustling community. So, we all agreed, us three, that it's still got a lot of legs in it. Do you agree?
Yeah, wholeheartedly. I think the fact that Sony backed down from their bizarre decision to have everyone have a PSN was a good idea, and it shows a bit of humility and a bit of like intelligence about that idea. Say what you want, but they backed down. They didn't have to, and they did. So I think that shows a bit of an intelligence on their behalf. The other thing as well is that like so I feel like I've already answered most of this by virtue of the fact that it has been my game of the year. But I will say, they had an update, I think it was the one before the Illumina came out.
Right.
And they were saying...
Was it the truth denier, where they all look like Imperial soldiers or something like that? They're really weird.
No, what I'm referring to is when they said, we're just going to buff all the weapons.
Oh, yes, sorry, I do remember that one, yeah.
Yeah, so as a game developer that's willing to do that, rather than just going through and trying to balance the game properly and make sure that like it's all down to the very fine nitty-gritty fine-tooth comb bullshit, they just went, let's just make it fun again and let's just make everything more powerful. And I applaud a developer that takes that risk, because that's what it is, risk.
Huge risk.
Takes that risk of potentially breaking their own game, but in doing so makes it way more fun, way more what being a Helldiver is supposed to feel like. You're supposed to feel like this badass who gets shot down onto a planet infested with insert enemy type here, to and then annihilating your way through to raise a flag or detonate a nuke or whatever it is that you end up doing. And I like the fact that they just went, let's just make everything way more fucking powerful, because yeah, they had nerfed a lot of things. And I think that a developer that's willing to do that, that's willing to take that risk and ensure that the game is still fun, is going to keep its legs on. It's going to be standing in a year or two, until they, they're going to keep adding to it. They're going to keep bringing stuff out. What I would say though is that I remember there was a time when there was such a hype behind the new enemy type coming out.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly when it was. I think it was about 8 months into its release cycle.
Yeah.
They all of the chess pieces were kind of lining up, and the community was foaming at the mouth for the potential for this new enemy type to come out, and then nothing came of it.
Yeah.
And it seemed a bit like, oh, you had like a golden opportunity. Now, whether the stuff was ready for release then, probably not, but from an outside perspective, it looked like they had everything in place, and then they just never did anything with it. They've built this community of like people who will read into things, who will look at things and see 2 + 2 equaling 5. And I think they need to be aware that this is a community that will see the dots on some armor and read the braille for it to read a date in the future and expect something to happen. And whether they just need to be on board with that, or whether they need to be careful with that information, that detail.
Yeah. I'm going to repeat the same thing I told the other two because it sounded smart and I'm quite proud of myself for it. I think Arrowhead have been victimized slightly by the fact that Sony have been the ones kind of dictating all the business thing. But I think Sony's biggest failure of this year is actually going to help them out. When Concord lasted 2 weeks.
It did, didn't it?
There's failing, and then there's throwing everything out of a bin and saying, no, never happened, walking away. They've seen how much Helldivers 2 has kind of picked itself back. It's survived a lot of problems. That might give Sony the impetus to say to Arrowhead, okay, you clearly know much better than the team we gave 400 million to. Go nuts. That's what I would like to see, because they've nailed on something that most live service games don't get right. Like you said, they've got a community that's willing to go looking for the lore. And that really helps. Like Destiny 2 suffers so much from all the fans being like, I don't really give a shit what's going on in these places. I just want to shoot things. Meanwhile, Helldivers, you've got that. The gameplay is so awesome. And then you also... That road sign there says something that could be important like 3 months down the line. Like the fact that the devs are clearly paying attention to all of this as well and responding with some tongue-in-cheek reactions. Like you said, I'm really hoping this thing keeps going, because as much as it has been like on-off, at least for all of us playing it, maybe you more than us, it deserves to stick around a lot longer than the original did.
100%. Yeah, 100% agree.